Welcome to the show. It is Thursday as we get closer to another Notre Dame game day. The Fighting Irish host Purdue this Saturday afternoon. It's a 3:30 kickoff at Notre Dame Stadium, and that means an 11 a.m. game day show live from the linebacker with Tim, Jim, Eric, and Tyler. You can join all of them. They've got a couple of guests coming up as well. Reggie Brooks, Ray Herring, they'll both be there. Live at the linebacker, and of course, right here on Sports Radio, WSBT. And just this week is, I don't know about you, has it flown by? Has it crawled by after last week? It's gone pretty quickly for me, actually.
I would say sports world-wise, it's gone by quickly. Work-wise, it has gone by slow.
Yeah, two different things, right? How about sports world Chicago Cubs back in the playoffs for the first time in 5 years? Are you excited about that after sweating every pitch all season long?
I do watch a lot of games. I would say out of 10 games, I watched 9, kind of where I'm at. But, you bring up that they haven't made it. Well, yeah, first of all, yes, I am happy, very happy. But the thing that I would say is, you bring up 2020. I don't even count that year because that was the COVID season. Really, the Cubs haven't done anything since like 2017 in terms of the playoffs, and that's just unacceptable in my opinion. We're going on 8 years here.
I'm trying to remember, did they make it back to the NLCS in 17, the year after the World Series?
Nah, I think so. No, they might have gotten bounced in the wild card round by the Brewers, to be honest with you. I can't 100% remember. I just know that it's been basically 8 years for a team that has one of the highest payrolls in Major League Baseball to get back to the playoffs. Unacceptable, if you ask me, but I'm elated.
Hey,
I'm really elated. And
they're in.
It's funny, too, because my friend Matt, who's also a really good Cubs fan, we text a lot, and he watches just as much as I do in terms of Cubs games. And yesterday, he was just like, he said, these dudes are celebrating like they won the division or something. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? They made the playoffs and it's been 8 years.
Yeah, they're in. None of these guys on the current roster have been in the playoffs, at least with the Chicago Cubs. Like, there's a lot to celebrate, Like, I realize as a fan, you've been there through the years, but you're in the play. It's what's amazing to me.
They'd win every other division, too. They have, like, the third best record in baseball. They just have the freaking juggernaut Brewers in their division. So it's like, what are you supposed to do,
It's amazing to me, though, to think that 2016 team with all those – I guess Ian Happ was there. I forgot about Ian Happ. He's still the
He's the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, but he was barely a significant, like especially in 16 and a little bit more in 17. But – amazing that with that nucleus of young guys in 16,
it took that long.
It is all disbanded, and they had to go through another drought, to climb back out of the hole. And
well, that would be the biggest disappointment, in my opinion, is what you're bringing up, that they literally only got one World Series out of that window when that was a really, really talented window. But we're here to talk about Notre Dame football.
We are here to talk about Notre Dame football.
And I need to bring something up, something that's been bothering me. I need to get this off my chest.
Okay.
You and Vince really, really made me mad yesterday because I wasn't lying about my comment about the offensive line. There wasn't much sarcasm in my voice. I just can't – you can't convince me that – it's like Vince wants them to be perfect every play. Like blown assignments don't happen on plays.
He does,
but
there's never supposed to be a tackle for loss. There's supposed to be a no game.
Like we're just supposed to
never give
have
up
an excellent block on every single play against some of these talented teams that Notre Dame has played. So what I was trying to say yesterday is the offense has done enough to win games against very talented teams early on in the season.
Absolutely.
And I get it. Things haven't been perfect on the offensive line. And really there was a lot. We saw some of that in the Miami game, but from Miami to Texas A&M, I would say things got really cleaned up on the offensive line. And I felt good about the offense. Like, I don't think it's fair to critique the offensive line or what the offense did and didn't do when it scored 34 points at home against a team like Texas A&M. So that's all I was trying to say. Like, obviously the offensive line wasn't perfect and they have things to work on, but I thought they were really good and did enough to win that game. And you can't expect perfection out of a group every single game.
What you have to realize about Vince is with every day, he's a grumpier old man, and he is, he's going to hold out his magnifying glass and he is going to find every little mistake to magnify. That's exactly what he does. And as I said, you might have summarized it even better there, but I did say, if you remember, the line did get better from game 1 to game 2. That was my point. Were they perfect? No. I think I said something along those lines. Is there still room for improvement? Yes. But again, I think that they've just played the best 2 defensive lines and, defensive front sevens that they are going to face all season. So with that in mind, and I do think that Miami's front was better than Texas A&M's front. And so I expect to continue to see, even if it is not what you would call true improvement, I would expect them to play better as this season goes on. Arkansas still an SEC team, so it could be a little bit closer. But like this week, I expect to see, I expect to see both an offensive line and a defensive line who's winning more head-to-head battles than we've seen the first couple of weeks, if nothing else, based on who they're playing. But also you would expect them to look better with each passing week.
100%. And I am in that boat completely, that we should see just more pure domination, good blocking against an opponent like Purdue.
Yes, exactly. Joe, Marcus Freeman did hold his Zoom conference today at noon with the media. Majority of the talk was about the defense. Joe's asking if I got to ask another tough question to Marcus Freeman in the Zoom. Not every day is a day for a tough question. Like, we got, I think, like he had to face the fire on Monday. Today is more,
Purdue related,
some marking business. And yeah, wasn't necessarily specific to Purdue, but a lot of personnel stuff that you're going to hear over the course of this. And Sean Kelly says, please tell me there's some positive information from today. I guess we'll have to let you be the judge of just how positive it is, because there's some things that you're going to hear. I won't say it's negative, but there's at least some concerns that you're going to hear.
You teasing the people right now?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Let's just jump right into it. Freeman talked about making defensive adjustments and how he might draw on his experience as defensive coordinator in 2021 as he made adjustments in both personnel and scheme and things like that as the season went along. So here's that.
I think at first we've had to come up with our plan in terms of what we think we can do with the guys that we're playing with that can prevent this offense from having success. And that's where it starts. And then you got to make sure that the players that you're going to play with understand the expectations, understand the scheme, and how you plan on defending this offense. And so it's still based off the offense you're playing and what scheme what scheme and coverages and pressures and fronts you want to use. And then you have to get your players to understand exactly what you want them to do and then get them to do it at a high level. So as I think back to when I was defense coordinator, I don't think we changed holistically as much as, okay, how do we want to play this coverage? How do we want to try to match certain routes? I utilized some of the great minds that we had in our room. And I think our guys were able to play faster as that season went on once we made some decisions on, okay, here's what you do well, here's how we're going to utilize you. And so I wish it was a simple answer in saying you just change this or change that, but it's not. It's a progression, and that's what I see with our defense, and hopefully the execution of that progression, the execution of what we're asking to do is at a much higher level than it was last Saturday.
Got two executions there at the end. Swang Dong in the YouTube chat was asking how many times he said execution. I think it was fairly minimal. You might hear a couple more over the course of what you're going to hear here in a little bit. So what did you think of what you heard there, Jesse? It's essentially how you change is going to be opponent-based to some extent, but it's also going to be what your guys are comfortable doing, something that we heard him talk about earlier in this week as well.
Yeah, so there was a lot of kind of talking in circles, in my opinion, and that's, in something like this, I think that has to be expected. I think people sometimes, think Marcus Freeman is going to get up there and just point blank say, we're going to blow everything up, and this is how we're going to do it, and blah blah blah. It's not going to be like that. And again, you're not going to it's like people always say, you don't overreact and you don't underreact, right? You got to kind of be somewhere in the middle. But I think the thing that gave me the most pause to what he was talking about is you don't want to kind of like holistically change who you are. And that was my biggest issue when we were doing the whiteboard on Tuesday, talking about the defense's, lapses, is I don't think they have a true identity or they know holistically who they are yet. So it's hard to adjust to an opponent offense when you don't have a base that everyone is comfortable with and everyone is, is comfortable kind of executing. And, that leads me into last year. I think Al Golden was really smart of recognizing this team is really talented in man. So how can we be a man-based defense and then make small tweaks like Marcus Freeman is talking to, right, and be responsive to whatever offense that we're playing? It just feels like they're kind of running out there and throwing stuff at the board and hoping something sticks almost. So like what Marcus Freeman said is true, but it's true. You have to have a base defense first and understand what you're good at before you can start tinkering with, okay, this is what we need to do that's opponent driven.
And that's, again, going back to the comments that he made earlier in the week about the structure of the defense has been in place, like when you talk about whose defense is, like, okay, so maybe the structure, the bones of it are there, but to your point, like Al Golden completely understood who his team was and that the personnel was best suited to play man-to-man. Now, as we saw, they played so much man-to-man and they didn't play, I don't want to say enough. They didn't play nearly as much zone as a lot of other teams in the country. And that came back to bite them when they tried to change against Ohio State in the national championship game. But so when Chris Ash came in and we saw like in the spring that they're running more zone and stuff like that, we saw at times during training camp, they're running more zone. It didn't feel like, well, he's just going to drastically switch this up and all of a sudden you're going to be, a soft zone team. It felt like, okay, you're practicing more zone because you just needed that in your toolbox last year. You weren't able to go to it with you need to, but we've seen just a drastic switch of who they are when you're talking about the identity of this defense.
Yeah, it feels like they're forcing this zone for no reason. Like you said, it just needs to be a tool when necessary. Like they didn't need zone for Texas A&M last year. They didn't need zone for, all these other various opponents. But yes, it was more so needed against Ohio State because we're talking about the best wide receiver in the country and the best wide receiver core and wide receiver unit in the country, right? So yes, situationally, it called for a little bit more zone. Notre Dame can still run a lot of base men. And I can't remember who it was.
And when they ran more man the other night.
That's what I was getting into. You saw the stats, right?
They were better. Yeah.
They were better running man. And so it's just like, I think before Marcus Freeman and maybe this is hard because of who they played in these first two games, right? Like, it probably would have been easier to break the ice of going against Purdue game 1 and then going against Boise State game 2. But that's just not the reality of the situation. So it's just no longer really an excuse, in my opinion. It's they needed to run a lot of man against those two teams and figure out off of that some variation. But it felt like they wanted to force this. We need to be multiple. We need to be man. We need to be zone. Everyone knew who Notre Dame was last season, and they still won a lot of football games. It's okay to be known as a man defense, but if you execute, like Marcus Freeman says, then no one can say anything because they can't stop you. If they know what you're running and you still can stop them, then what's the issue? Like when teams start beating you, that's when you start making adjustments. So it feels like they made all these premature adjustments, going into this season, rather than, again, just focusing on what they're good at, and that's being a good man secondary.
Beezer12 Washington in the YouTube chat asks if we think Ash will be in the press box this Saturday or still on the field. Beezer says he prays he is upstairs. I mean, he said he's going to be on the field. He's not just going to go up still. Like, he's not going to switch things up. Like, he doesn't, there's no world, I think, where they think, man, if he were up in the press box, things would be different. I don't think that that's the case by any means. So I'd bet dollars to donuts he'll be down on the field, and he'll stay on the field all season long.
Agreed. I think that, you have defensive staff up in the box. They'll tell you exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. All right, so Freeman talked about the secondary having a hard time adjusting to the speed of opposing receivers, and Purdue, of course, has more speed at that position than last year. So he talked about that a little bit.
It goes back to, as I said on Monday, consistency, right? And consistency is really derived from practice habits, and we got to continue to practice with the correct habits and practice against speed, and then that's got to carry over to the game. And so again, we control practice right now. We got to continue to practice at a high level with the proper technique and consistency doing it, and then that's got to carry over to the game.
Okay, so you've got both Leonard Moore. Now, this is the bad news. Leonard Moore with an ankle that he injured against Texas A&M, and Devonta Smith kept him out of the game with an ankle against Texas A&M. They are both still listed as questionable in the updated player availability for today. So you listen to Marcus Freeman's comments there, and you look at those two guys at the very least potentially limited. What's your concern with this matchup with the Boilers?
Yeah, so, you asked me this question last year and probably at the beginning of the season, I would just kind of brush it off, but nothing has given me any inclination that this can just be brushed off by Notre Dame's secondary this season. We're talking about, one of the best corners in the country and obviously the best corner on the team potentially not being there. We saw what happened last week when, Devonta Smith couldn't go. So I think this is a pretty big deal. And I think the biggest thing that you have to look at is this Purdue offense just isn't the same as last season. So you can't go into this game and be like, oh, we're just going to completely dominate them and do what we do. Like, there's a lot of tape out there showing kind of Notre Dame's deficiencies right now. And then if you remove some of their better secondary players, you're going to be in a tough time. Like, there's nothing that has shown me that some of these younger guys that have gotten an opportunity, Zachary, Hobbs, those sort of guys, have really had an impact so far. So, if we're talking on a scale of 1 to 10, my concern meter is a solid at least 5 out of 10. Like, this is a 50-50 kind of concern for me because, again, they haven't proven that they can be a shutdown team yet. And then you start removing some of the, supposed better players on defense. It could honestly get worse no matter who you're playing.
Yeah. And
there's a good chance this game goes to a shootout.
Now you're getting scary there. I was just about to say none of their guys necessarily tore it up against USC last week. A couple of them had solid games, but nothing earth-shattering. And now Purdue did move the ball against USC. There was one interception in the end zone. I think there was another interception in the red zone, and that's the thing to look at with Brown is he will turn the ball over a little bit. He's got 8 interceptions and 180 career pass attempts, so it's about every 20, 21 or so pass attempts that he throws an interception.
Had 3 against USC.
Yeah, he did. 3 against USC last week. But Notre Dame's also not turning the ball, causing the turnovers, which we all know. That's an issue. It's going to have to look a lot different. Lucas is already in the YouTube chat going to the wild side here. How much do you want to bet Purdue scores 30 points on us? Very optimistic there, Lucas. Very optimistic at the outset right now. Andre was asking which coordinator is up in the box then if Ash is down on the field. There's not a coordinator up in the box. There are just other defensive coaches up in the box that he is communicating with. And Facilitate wants to know if the Zoom presser is published somewhere. It is not. It is strictly, invitation only, I guess you'd say. And then, like we can use whatever of it at our discretion, for reporting and things like this, basically. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we'll hear a couple more comments from Marcus Freeman on his secondary. There's a couple more that we need to get to, and a couple more on just the defense in general. Jesse's got some whiteboard. He's going to take a look at that Wildcat formation that Mike Denbrock and the Irish offense used so much last week. So we'll do that when we return. It's Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat on a Thursday with IrishBreakdown.com. Rolling on through this 5 o'clock hour, Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers. Don't forget, you can always watch the show on either of the YouTube channels that we're on, Irish Breakdown or Sports Radio WSBT. Subscribe to that Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel while you're at it. You'd be doing us a great service if you would. Appreciate it. We're going to get to some whiteboard here in a minute. I want to get a couple more comments from Marcus Freeman, though, from his noon Zoom call today with the media. Carson Hobbs took the majority of reps at nickel last week with Devonta Smith out. And again, Smith is questionable with that same ankle injury this week. So Freeman talked about, are there any options, any other options beyond just Carson Hobbs this week if Smith is out again?
We've been repping a couple guys at the nickel position. You know, we've been repping Christian a little bit at nickel. We've repping Dallas Golden and Ben Minnick. And so a couple guys that we feel confident can go out there and play. And that will be depending on Devonta's health and what he can do. And again, I'm optimistic about it. He's had a good Tuesday and Wednesday. We got to make sure that, you know, we can see what he can do first. And then if he can't go, then we have a plan behind him.
So he is optimistic that Smith will be able to play. Sounds like maybe some thick tape and get that dude ready to go out there. But he talked about Dallas Golden took some reps there at nickel. Christian Gray took some reps at nickel. So obviously if Gray were to play nickel, then that means you're going to have somebody else outside, and you've already got Leonard Moore with a little bit of an ankle, Ben Minnick as well. I don't know. So does this just make this game feel a little bit dicier? Like, how do you feel when you hear that?
I mean, I don't feel good about it. You know, this was already, I mean, you could probably say this, the secondary was relatively thin, right? Like they're not hurting. I think they're on the verge of hurting. And before the season started, like I said, you would probably classify them as a little bit thin in terms of depth. So, you know, this game definitely does get a little bit dicier if Devonta Smith can't go and Leonard Moore is banged up, and now you're relying on a lot of younger guys, and depth is already an issue. So, you know, this is going to be a dicier situation. And I do expect that Notre Dame would probably, you know, put more of its resources towards the pass and go, you know, maybe a lighter box and force Purdue to have to run the ball if that's the scenario. But I do think that this is also a good opportunity to develop depth, right? Like if you want to spin it in a good way, this is a way for a lot of these guys, you know, Minnick, Golden, Tay Johnson. Like a lot of these guys are going to get more playing time on the field, and I do think that is going to help you down the road. Like this would be even more of a situation if it was against Texas A&M or, you know, Miami to start the season. So I guess you do get a little bit of a luxury to kind of, what I would say, develop some of these guys and not such a high stakes game. But can you really not call it high stakes when you're 0-2 and you're trying to get your first win of the season?
You still have to win this game. Yes, absolutely. That's the question. I mean, it's not like, you know, like you want your best guys out there if at all possible. Hobbs' snap count jumped after he split time with Devonta Smith in that opener against Miami. He played 21 snaps in that game. He went to 56 last week because of the fact that Smith was out. So we'll see what this ends up looking like. Hopefully Devonta Smith is at least able to split reps maybe with Carson Hobbs. Dallas Golden is intriguing because of, you know, the recruiting profile and the whole thing. And he did have a good camp. We haven't seen much of him so far. So, I mean, like that's what makes that even more intriguing. Chris asks, I think we do agree on KVA, not at nickel though. Like let him play linebacker. I would take the linebacker, but not at nickel. Now, safety is another question, especially in the first half, because of the fact that Adon Shuler got the targeting call, like it or not, still a targeting call on him. He was ejected in the second half of last week's game, and that means he's got to sit the first half of this week's game. So Freeman touched on the plan for that this Saturday.
As far as the safety position, you'll see all three of those guys between Tay-Tay, Stroman, and Luke Talmadge in the first half. You'll probably see Tay-Tay go out first with Stro, and you'll see Luke in there a lot too. So I'm confident all three of those guys had a really good week of practice, and then obviously Adon will come in the second half.
There you go. So are you all in on Mr. Tay Johnson?
Marcus Freeman is all in on Tay Johnson, I can tell you that.
Yes.
I saw this clip from him during the game on Saturday where Johnson made a play on the sideline, and Marcus Freeman was just elated, hyping him up, getting all fired up and stuff. So, I think he's a great player. I think he's going to be one of the next kind of really good secondary players. And I am all in on Tay Johnson. He doesn't look like someone out there who's, young and inexperienced. He kind of plays like, like the game speed doesn't affect him. He's able to make his reads. So, honestly, I've been really impressed by him. And I think it's very obvious that he's going to be option one in that 3-man rotation. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that he needs to be a guy that kind of phases out some of these other guys in terms of secondary play. So the more you can get him on the field, the more he can show now, I think you're just going to continue to see an increased role as the season goes on.
I agree. Like, this could be a turning point type thing for him if he's able to play well this week and really just start building upon that. All right, Kevin Park asked, and I was debating, do I go ahead and do this today? Do I save it for tomorrow? Maybe. Somebody asked, where did it go? There it is. Somebody asked, this is the question that I asked about, because he rattled off those guys who are options. And Kevin Park in the YouTube chat is asking about Jadon Blair, the freshman. He was at least seemingly in the mix during training camp and thought maybe we might have seen some of him by now. Obviously, 2 very close games, so they maybe, just weren't quite confident enough in him at this point. So I did ask Marcus Freeman, what about Jadon Blair? Where is he at right now in his development as a true freshman?
Better. He is, he's improving. And, is he at a point where he is going to play over those 4 guys that are playing for us consistently? No. But he's practiced his tail off. He's working. The future's uncertain. I'm going to say that. But I'm really pleased with his progression in terms of how he's improving as a football player. But right now, he's just not going to play over those 4 guys we have out there.
So there you go. Talented young guy, not ready to go yet, is basically what Marcus Freeman said. Any other interpretation, what you heard, Jesse?
No, it just doesn't sound like they trust him fully in the defense and know that, he's going to execute every play kind of what they're looking for. So, it's hard because you get a guy that's, a 4-star and has a lot of talent. And just like with Snead being, highly recruited, you just think because they're so athletic and so good, they're going to see the field now. But unfortunately, there's just a lot to learn when you get to the college level. And then obviously beyond that, when you go to the NFL level. So even some of the most talented guys have to kind of take a step back and learn a little bit so they can play with that velocity that Marcus Freeman talks about.
Yep. Be nice if all these other guys would play with a little bit more velocity that they talk about. All right. Get your whiteboard ready to go. Get it queued up. Have it ready. Jim in the YouTube chat asks, who is the 1 or 2 people / positions we should be worried about Saturday? I would just say, again, because of the way the secondary has played, I think that they've got a decent quarterback in Ryan Brown, though he does have 4 interceptions through 3 games already. He threw 3 against USC last week. Solid completion percentage, around 63%. I'd say the 2 receivers that Notre Dame is going to have to be the most conscious of are Armand Branch and Nitro Tuggle. And Tuggle is actually a local guy, went to Northwood, went to Georgia.
Oh, he started down at Georgia, yeah.
He went to Georgia for a year, yeah, and he is transferred to Purdue. He is just a sophomore, but he has 7 catches for 123 yards, so that's a little over 17.5 yards per reception. And then Armand Branch is averaging almost 24 yards per catch, 7 catches, 167 yards. So what you don't want is a repeat of what you had with Mario Craver last week, with like one of those guys could easily do an imitation of that, just based on what they have done so far. So I think those are the two guys that you've got to be conscious of everyone, obviously, as a secondary, but those two guys have shown that they can, be game breaker type guys if you let them free. And there were too many guys running free, obviously, last week against the Aggies.
I just think that the defense needs to get its swagger back. They need to feel and taste like what it means to play good defense. And then you start kind of, rolling or catching steam after that. And I think that this game is a good opportunity to do so. Yes, there's going to be, some talented players on the field, but obviously nowhere near as talented as the Miami and Texas A&M teams that they face. So I want to see the secondary dictating terms. I want to see them playing with swagger. I want to see the offense afraid of the secondary or second guess some throws or double pump or maybe throw a bad ball into coverage.
Concur. All right. Jesse's got the whiteboard. I've got it up here on the screen. I will describe. So this is Notre Dame's Wildcat. And so whether it's Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, it was obviously mostly Love last week. You've got him directly behind the center in a shotgun. We've got the ball centered up, middle of the field, two receivers left, one to the right, and a tight end on a wing to the right as well. And the defense that Jesse has drawn up has 6 men on the line of scrimmage, 2 linebackers, and then 3 corners. Go.
Yeah, so this is the 4th and 1 play against Texas A&M this last weekend. And like you said, the very first thing that you notice is Texas A&M had 8 guys committed to the box. Notre Dame had 7 players and Jeremiah Love. So obviously Jeremiah Love isn't going to block anyone. So really you have 7 linemen for 8 box players. So, I kind of wanted to go through 2 plays from the Wildcat and kind of talk about some of the drawbacks or deficiencies that were noticed. And then I'd like to get into, what can be done to be a little bit more creative and help these Wildcats, help the Wildcat formation. Because I'm going to be honest with everyone here. Everyone's probably going to say, well, why are they wasting their time? They shouldn't run this. That's just simply not going to happen because last season it was the Riley Leonard power in a lot of short down situations. This year it's going to be Wildcat, So
the difference with Riley Leonard power is you still had the quarterback in there, so there was at least some element of surprise, even if you thought he was going to go. But as soon as you put a running back there, you take away any surprise.
Yeah, and you kind of beat me to the punch on that one. That's that's kind of like drawback number 1 is when you put a running back here in the backfield, there's no threat to pass. So, the number 1 thing you notice right now is there's no safeties over top. Last year when Riley Leonard would get in this formation, sometimes you'd see a single high safety. You'd see, maybe a cover 2 shell. So you have 2 safeties high. When you go straight Wildcat, you're inviting everyone to the dang box. There is no threat of passing the ball. You're allowing everyone to get into the box. And so that was issue kind of number 1. Issue number 2 is when they ran this play and got stuffed. CJ Carr is the wide receiver to the double side, to the left side here. I don't know why this won't draw. He's right here. That's a big issue because
who's this now? I'm sorry.
This is CJ Carr lined up, split out at wide receiver. And the reason why this is an issue is CJ Carr is not blocking that safety, So on the snap of the ball where there's no threat to pass and you've got your quarterback split out here, this defensive back has nothing to worry about but run. And so, of course, he's going to come down and beat CJ Carr off the ball and really just fold in and be another basically be a 9th player into the box. So, step number 1 here, why don't we get rid of CJ Carr and completely displace him from the formation? Like, he needs to be the single high wide receiver on this side and let someone like Jordan Faison, who has been tremendous in the pass blocking game, be this wide receiver who can actually seal off a safety, right? So
then again, you're also just tipping which direction it's going to go if you just put CJ Carr on one side and then run away from him every time. So you're tipping even more. if you're doing it that way. Personally, like, why even have him on the field? If you're going to run Wildcat, why bother with the, whatever pseudo deception you're trying to do by having him out there in the field, and then you break and you get to the line and go Wildcat? Just run him off the field and put an actual receiver or a tight end out there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. But I, to your first point, you would think so, but Jeremiah Love ran right at this. This was the play where they ran to CJ Carr's side. So
yeah, exactly.
like why have him on the field, and then why would you run to his side as well where he needs to, secure a block out there? So that's kind of issue number one, is like CJ Carr needs to not be in the slot. You need to get him out. You need to get an actual wide receiver in there. And there's no threat to pass the ball, these linebackers don't have any job, but basically as soon as they see the snap of the ball, they're just like full steam ahead, right? So like, what are you kind of doing in this situation to confuse the defense besides just saying, all right, well, here's our really good running back, and we're just going to run the ball right at you and hope this thing goes really well. So also what happens on this play is it's a power play. So Gerby Lambert
make this point real quick so we can take a break and come back.
Gerby Lambert pulls here. I don't love the idea on 4th and 1 to run a power play to the perimeter. Just get north and south, like go big on big and get downhill right now. So I'll stop there so we can go to break.
Cool. We'll do that. We'll come back. We'll take a break. We will come back and hit some more Wildcat whiteboard right after this. Forgot to put our faces up on the screen before I put the whiteboard back on the screen. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers, winding down hour one. We've got rapid fire coming up in hour number two. I mean, it is like I couldn't fit more rapid fire into today's show than what we've got lined up for hour two. As Jesse gets ready to show us more on the whiteboard, Bobby O'Shea says, just a fact, but we're 0-2 this year when Jesse does the whiteboard. Not so fast, my friend. It's actually 0-1. There was no whiteboard prior to the Miami game, so it's only 0-1.
That's a good point, actually.
All right, what else have you got? You've been showing us some of the Wildcat. Are you going to go now to where Mike Denbrock can kind of build off this Wildcat and add some other things other than just straight runs by the running backs?
Yeah, so there's kind of one more pet peeve I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
And then we'll get into solutions. So this was first and goal from the 5-yard line, and they got stuffed pretty good on this play. I can't remember the exact moment in the game, but Notre Dame, different formation look. You've got obviously Jeremiah Love in shotgun as the Wildcat. Ball's on the left hash. You have 2 wide receivers in like a bunch kind of on the hash. You have your tight end playing a wing, and then you have the single wide receiver into the boundary. So what you notice watching this is Notre Dame had to go silent count, another drawback of going with someone who doesn't play quarterback handling the snap. And so silent count at home, don't love that. But the real reason I don't like that is because how Notre Dame does the silent count is the left guard will look back at Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love will give him the leg pump or the head nod. He'll tap the center, and then the center will hike the ball. Well, when you watch the film, some of these guys on the Notre Dame line, since it's a silent count, they don't know when the ball is being snapped. And so when you have no jet motion, you have all these players in the box, you're going silent count. These defenders are literally just pinning their ears back and getting a jump start on these Notre Dame defensive linemen and really just beating them to the punch, beating them to the ball essentially. So again, just another drawback that you see. And the reason why I bring this up is because on this play, I can't remember if it was the outside linebacker or the defensive end, but I mean, he just straight up beats the right tackle because the right tackle is slow getting off the ball because he doesn't know when the ball is going to be snapped, right? So he just jackknifes his way in there and blows up Jeremiah Love at first and goal for like a loss of 3 or 4, I want to say. So again, just kind of to summarize some of the pet peeves that I have. One, if you're going to run this, just get CJ Carr off the field completely. Number 2, don't run outside the tackles. If it's 4th and 1, we don't need to pull guards. Like, let's just go big on big and get up the middle, get vertical for a yard.
You need a yard. Shouldn't Jeremiah Love and/or Jadarian Price behind Notre Dame's line be able to pick up a yard?
Right. And
Isn't that the whole point?
Option 3 would be, pet peeve 3 would be, let's get rid of the silent count somehow, because you're already inviting all these players to the box, and then you're giving them kind of a running start or a head start into your static offensive line.
Because half of your own line doesn't even know when to go. Yeah,
exactly. They have to imagine being an offensive lineman in this situation where you need to keep your left eye down the line and look at the ball, but also keep your eye across the guy in front of you at the same time. Like, how are we doing that? So it's just completely unacceptable in my opinion. So now let's get into the fun part of this. How do we start kind of dialing this up to get into a better spot? So let me edit the formation here a little bit. First thing I would like to see, let's get these guys spread out here a little bit. So first thing I'd like to, I have about 3 plays I kind of want to go through here.
You need to go fairly quick.
So first thing that we need to do is, if you're going to run this play, at least put someone in motion, because what you're doing by putting it in motion is these linebackers have to rotate down, or at least their eyes are following it, right? So again, what can we do to at least make it so the defense can't just static bull rush right down the middle every time? Well, let's put a guy in motion. Let's get the eyes moving a little bit. on the snap of the ball, okay, now we've caught them off guard a little bit, right? Like we've regained that step essentially, right? So let's get into a little bit of jet motion in some of these instances. Now, here's probably my favorite solution. I think what Notre Dame should do is go 2 backs in the backfield. I think you should have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in the backfield. And the reason why I say this is I don't care if another team wants to load the box and everyone's running. The reason why this is successful is because Jeremiah Love can basically take the snap and run his own RPO.
Right.
You can either give this ball to Jadarian Price going one way, and that starts again, the linebackers have to respect that. They start flowing that way, and either you hand it off and he gets vertical because you like what you see, or Love keeps the ball and he just runs it backside up the middle. But at least you're getting the linebackers and the defensive line to move in one direction rather than just going north and south and plugging up the line of scrimmage as much as possible, right? So that would be solution number 1, in my opinion, is get a nice jet motion going, have Jadarian Price in the backfield, and just run an RPO with Love and Price, right? Like, you got 2 options, and at least you're getting the defense to freaking, look one direction or the other. Second option here, and I think this would be really fun, to be honest with you. We talked about, what can Notre Dame do to get the defense in a different look just besides loading up the box. How about this? Why don't we just come out in a normal Notre Dame formation? CJ Carr is at quarterback. Jeremiah Love is at running back. And you know what you can do here? Why don't we – you've seen teams do this before, right? CJ Carr shifts over. Jeremiah Love gets under center, right? But the reason why you come out in this is because then you have the safeties over top. Like they're not expecting Wildcat.
Yeah, you're not letting them just crawl down within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Right. They would come out in their normal defense. So you come out, you're at the line of scrimmage, and then boom, you hit the motion. Everyone just takes a step to the left. Jeremiah Love becomes the quarterback. CJ Carr becomes the running back. And then from there, what you would do is, you've seen it before, running backs motion out of the backfield. Let's motion CJ Carr out of the backfield, get the defense to have to respect that. Maybe the safeties are trying to figure out, do we need to come down? Boom, snap of the ball. You just run power right up the middle with Jeremiah Love. But you're doing more pre-snap to get deception, right? You're starting out in a normal formation. CJ Carr looks like it's just another shotgun formation. Everyone slides over. You motion CJ Carr out of the backfield, and now you've created more confusion. Like, you're just window dressing Wildcat. Like, find ways to window dress Wildcat than just getting out there, no motion, snap of the ball, and just running it. Like, you got to do more than that. And so I'm a little disappointed in Denbrock's laziness, just thinking that straight Wildcat would work. Like, you still have to do more to dress it up than just put Jeremiah Love out there, snapping the ball, and hope that he makes a good play.
Yeah, the stuff that you talked about, 2 running backs makes sense. Carr back there with him makes sense. And then just shifting. And then also, even if you're going to line Carr up someplace else, just like the jet sweep action where Love can fake a handoff to a receiver again, then you've got guys looking and maybe taking a false step in one direction, and then Jay Love keeps it himself and does something else. There's just like, maybe that's the next step. Let's hope for, because it was very basic type stuff that we saw out of it last week. But I agree, like, it feels like if quarterback power was their mode of operation last year, and I think Marcus Freeman talked about it, you get the ball into the hands of your best athlete. But I think it's got to be more than just basic telegraphing what you're going to do, by doing zero window dressing around it.
Just something like you said, to get the linebackers off a step, or at least hesitate for a second, because what I showed you, like, literally those linebackers are just flying downhill immediately. They have no regard or no other assignment besides literally tackle the guy with the ball, So, like, what can you do to get eyes moving, to get guys having to shift, to get, just respect the game here a little bit. And I think if you have CJ Carr out in the field, at some point you need to work in a play where maybe Carr goes in motion and Love hits him on like a backwards lateral, so then CJ Carr can throw the ball now, right? Like, there just needs to be more variation and mixing in. And maybe that's, maybe that's a plan. Maybe Denbrock wanted to start with base, and then you start working off of it. You would think, though, they'd have more solutions for how high, like how much leverage there was on this game, you know, how much importance there was on this game.
And how much they used it, because it was all just kind of the same.
It felt like it lacked creativity at the end of the day.
Beefeater, by the way, in the YouTube chat asks, any chance we see Nolan James this week? I would doubt it. I would seriously doubt it. You know, where they are at 0-2 right now, they're not just going to go to Nolan James. I mean, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are still clearly the two best running backs on the team. So I'm not going to say Nolan James isn't going to get any snaps, but, you know, if he does, I think it's going to be, you know, like if the game, I don't think the game one is going to get nearly as out of hand as it did last year when they played at Purdue and they scored 66 points. But I think that's when a guy like Nolan James is going to get in if they're up comfortably in the fourth quarter and they have an opportunity to get more reserves in. Yeah, exactly. Beefeater. That's exactly it. More, you know, garbage time, if that's what you want to call it. It's not my preferable term, garbage time, because those reps, you know, are not garbage to those guys who get in. They still mean something to them. But, you know, like that's kind of when it would happen, I think. All right. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, rapid fire, hour number 2. We've got a lot more Notre Dame stuff and some other topics as well. Still to come, hour number 2, rapid fire is on the way. Yes, it is rapid fire time as we start hour number 2 of the show. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is with me, and we have plenty of topics to get into. If I can cue up my screen here in the right place and find where to start talking. Here is what Marcus Freeman said this week about Jeremiah Love's 23 carry workload against Texas A&M last week.
We were intentional about wanting to put the ball in his hands. So much of that is determined, one, by play calling, but two, by the amount of plays that you have as an offense. And what you saw is we were able to have some longer play drives. And with more plays, it's more opportunities to get the ball in his hands. And he did a great job, and he always does when you get the ball in his hands.
All right, Jesse. So what did you think about Jeremiah Love's dramatically increased workload last week? You're talking, but nothing is coming out. There it is. Go ahead.
I think that there was a clear and obvious push to get him the ball as much as possible. But I think what Marcus Freeman said really holds a lot of value is I don't think it's necessarily, a certain number. I think it's more or less one in every 4 plays, we want Jeremiah Love to touch the ball. And the more that the game goes on or the more drives that you have that last long, that number is just going to continue to increase at the end of the day. So I think it's they want him to have 25% of the workload offensively. And as the game goes on, that number is going to only do anything but increase when you're scoring a lot, having long drives that go down the field. So, it makes perfect sense. We saw him catch a one-handed pass out of the backfield and take it in for a touchdown. There's so many ways he could be utilized. We saw him. And, honestly, to kind of reinforce what we were just talking about, I think the Wildcat has a big part of that as well, why the snap count was up. When you have a package where that is largely, I know Price took took a couple, but I think that, the introduction of this Wildcat package adds more to that snap share as possible.
Yeah, that's very true. If they're going to do more of that, then that's naturally going to increase his carries there. That's a really good point. I hadn't, really even factored that into it. But you're looking at 27 total touches. And look, after week 1 and he's only carrying the ball 10 times, we're all talking about it. And he's got to touch the ball more. He got the ball more. He averaged around 4 yards per carry. He had 4 more catches for 53 yards. So, that's. And then, like you said, when you factor in the Wildcat, that's kind of the workload that I think that you expect out of a number 1 type guy. Now, as Josh says, Price was the hotter hand. Probably so. At least at times he was. Because I think that still, the thing, and we talked about this earlier in the week with Love, is he's just got to be a little more patient. He was rushing a little bit, getting over his skis, coming downhill. Just be a little bit more patient. Wait for that hole to get there, and he's got a chance to break it. It felt like he wanted everything to go 80 yards every time that he touched the ball. And maybe with, for good reason, after the fact that he was limited to 10 carries against Miami in the opener. But I do think that 23, I'm not complaining because, the way we talked about 10 carries after the first game, I think 23 might be on the high end, but, even if you're talking about 18-ish carries and then 4 or 5 more receptions, I think that that's a really good workload because you do still have to figure out how you're balancing this with Jadarian Price, because I think that there is still a more prominent role for Jadarian Price as well.
Yeah, and again, I just think that this Wildcat formation really added a lot to the workload, and maybe that was just game plan dependent. I don't think we're going to see that much Wildcat every single week, and I think it's something that they want to use situationally, and it really shouldn't come up against Purdue. You should be able to dominate them outside of having to run the Wildcat formation. But I also agree that if we're not going to see Aeneas Williams, then this needs to be more, split between Jadarian Price. And I'll still say this, whether or not Notre Dame was 0-2 and 2-0. This is the best running back duo in the country. And yes, you want Jeremiah Love to have a lot of touches, but you also want Jadarian Price to get touches too, because
Yes.
I mean, just look at the way he ran the ball against Texas A&M. I thought he was fantastic, to be honest with you. He just runs so angry all the time, so north and south, and just really a lot of explosion that comes out of, kind of that bigger, stockier looking body of his.
Yeah, it's like going back to when that team that we loved so much had Marion Barber and Julius Jones in the backfield. You remember when Barber would come in and he was just like the more physically, like that angry runner that you're talking about. There's definitely, and I'm not saying that Love isn't, but there's definitely more of that with Price.
And I'm a little bit surprised that, that there wasn't more maybe of a concerted effort to use Price in the Wildcat compared to Love because of that reason. I think he's a little bit more of a bowling ball and he can get downhill north-south and really put his shoulder into someone. So, just the more we talk about it, I have more and more kind of pet peeves. I don't mind the idea of the Wildcat. It's just the way that it was executed and drawn
Be
up
more
on
creative.
Saturday.
Be more creative. Like cause more. Make the defense have to think a little bit more.
Yeah, and get more north and south with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, for sure. So scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence that Love ends up rushing for over 1,000 yards this season?
I'm going to go a solid 8 out of 10. I think there's definitely a concerted effort to have, to get him more workload this season. You have 12 regular season. I think he does this in the regular season, to be honest with you. I don't even think he would need a potential, bowl game or playoff if Notre Dame makes it to that point. I think he gets this done in the regular season. I'm willing to go 8 out of 10.
I'm 8 out of 10 as well. I'm very confident. Slow start, but obviously picked it up last week. And again, what he's going to see the rest of the way isn't going to be what he's seen these first 2 weeks. I fully expect he's going to have Jeremiah Love is going to have like 150, 160 yard game on, maybe 12 to 15 carries, something like that, where he's going to break 2 or 3 runs pretty long. And all of a sudden the numbers are going to kind of start to add up like a video game. And the next thing you know, he's going to be over 1,000 yards this season. So I do think that I'm pretty confident he's going to get there again. I give it an 8. I am Tenzin. I'm the son of Ang, getting very angsty here. Marcus Freeman suppressing the creativity of the offense. He says either that's sarcasm or he just wants to blame Marcus Freeman for everything because he's disgruntled at this point. So I don't know which it is. By the way, Beefeater Jesse, with a little question there for you. Wedding in 2 weeks? What is it?
2 weeks.
17, 16 days away, something like that at this point?
Yeah. Yep. 2 Saturdays from this Saturday.
It's getting here. Fill in the blank. It's blank that when asked about how Tyler Buckner juggles his time between being the special teams holder and being the number 3 quarterback, Irish quarterback coach Gino Gaduli said, quote, his primary focus is being the holder. You know what I mean? Like there's not a whole lot of reps that go to the number 3 quarterback, end quote.
It's even more frustrating because if that's the case, then he should never drop an extra point, ever. If you're telling me his main priority on this team is to be a special teams, guru, or I don't even know what the word you would use, but
special team specialist.
Yeah. Then it's so infuriating and even more inexcusable that he drops that ball. He should be taking 100 reps off the jug machine or something every day, focusing on just catching the ball. So I don't know. I don't like hearing that because it just draws more attention to the fact that he dropped the ball on that extra point.
He had his Romo moment for sure. I kind of looked at it in a different way. I looked at this as there are a lot of people who continue to still live under the guise that somehow Tyler Buckner is going to be an actual factor in the offense, like he might ever take real snaps at quarterback. But, Gino Guidugli is saying his primary focus is being the holder. To your point, you should never drop a snap if that is your primary focus. If that's the main thing that you're working on, there's not a whole lot of reps that go to the number 3 quarterback. He is there as an emergency quarterback is what he is, because he does have more experience than Herbert and, the rest of the guys out there. That's why he is the number 3 quarterback. He's not there because he is actually working the offense. So it is, on the one hand, frustrating, makes it even more frustrating that he did drop, a snap that was right to him, and it looked like it just hit off the heel of his hand. And at the same time, it's like, this is not a guy who is actually going to be some kind of factor in the offense. Maybe he's a factor in a fake or something else like we saw last year, but that's going to be the extent of it. You're not going to get a whole lot of trust, by the way, to be a guy who is counted on to execute a fake when you drop easy snaps like that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that KK Smith caught his first pass before Jaden Greathouse.
It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And I hate to be, everyone was on the Greathouse train after the last couple of games last season, and I always felt like I was the guy, like, well, let's kind of see it carry over into this next season. And it's like, well, you got CJ Carr, you should be able to, catch the ball better. Notre Dame has just become a wide receiver by committee. I don't think that their offense is designed in a way that they have a true wide receiver that they're trying to funnel the ball to. It's just whoever happens to be out there. You know what I mean? So it's really shocking.
You've just muted yourself again. I don't know how you managed to do that. Click it. There you go.
My connection got there. For someone who has as much skill as Jaden Greathouse, and knowing how much better CJ Carr is in the passing game this year, I would say, again, it's shocking, but it's honestly unacceptable. Like, you have to find a way to get him the ball, because he is probably your most dynamic.
And, Vince and I were talking about this yesterday, and I agree with what you're saying. Doesn't it feel like, especially when you look at the fact that the top 2 receivers right now, top 2 pass catchers, Eli Raridan, 9 for 182 through 2 games. Obviously, a big chunk of that came on the 65-yard catch and run against Miami, but he had another long one last week as well. Malachi Fields, 8 for 125, and then it goes Jeremiah Love, 8 for 79, Jordan Faison, 7 for 50. But when you look at Raridan, when you look at Fields and Faison, those 3 guys specifically, not counting the running back, like, most of what they're doing is out on the perimeters. Doesn't it feel like, and again, both Greathouse and Pauling are slot receivers. Doesn't it feel like they are avoiding all that
the middle of the field
congestion in the middle of the field? And, especially when you have a big target like either Raridan or Fields. Obviously, Faison's not that big, but he's an outside receiver. Doesn't it feel like that's kind of what they're doing right now with CJ Carr? Like, they're avoiding that center of the field as much as possible?
Oh, 100%. And I think that does nothing but, be a disservice to Pauling, to Greathouse, or whoever's in the slot. Like, you can't be a slot wide receiver and not work the middle of the field.
Yeah.
So, maybe that development comes as we get into the season and CJ Carr gets more confident. Or honestly, I don't think CJ Carr is not confident. I think the coaching staff is just a little worrisome of what could happen if you go over the middle of the field. But you're 0-2 at this point. So, like, what is there to lose? Like, obviously there's a lot to lose, but I think that there should be less reservation than there was 2 games ago. I guess what I'm trying to get at.
I agree. Let's take a timeout. More rapid fire coming up next as we continue. We've got a lot more topics stacked up in rapid fire. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Rapid Fire and Budweiser's weekday sports beat continues on Sports Radio WSBT and the Irish Breakdown platforms as well. Jesse, I was looking at the over-under Notre Dame Purdue. It actually started out like within the last hour, it was 52.5. It has dropped. The over-under has dropped to 51.5 as we've been doing the show here.
Really?
Yeah.
51.5?
51.5. Notre Dame is favored by 25.5. They've got the line. They've got the over-under at 51.5. That seems incredibly low to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Notre Dame has put up almost 40 points against A&M and 20-something versus Miami.
They're averaging over 30, but they're also giving up around 30 per game.
Right. So what that shows to me is they think the defense really is going to stagger Purdue.
I guess so.
But, I don't think any of us are buying that.
I don't, and until we see it, I don't think any of us are believing it. So, yeah, that was interesting that the line actually, obviously that means you've got, action moving on that, but 51.5 right now for the over-under Notre Dame Purdue Saturday. Very interesting. There was a question. Okay, there were a couple. Bobby in the YouTube chat says, is Jesse doing a whiteboard version of his wedding vows? Bobby is all over you. Is that, can you confirm or deny whiteboard version of the wedding vows coming?
That is a big deny.
Oh, you don't think Naomi would be up for that whiteboard up at the front on the altar?
I haven't even written mine yet.
Joseph asks, should Notre Dame's defense continue to falter? What is the shelf life for Chris Ash? Also, what is next? Promote Mickens or look outside in the offseason.
It's hard to say. I don't think Marcus Freeman is just going to can a guy in season. I think he's going to, as much as it pains me to say, not even pains because we're only 2 games into this sucker, but there's no way that Chris Ash doesn't make it till the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't think, even if we continue to see the kind of things happening that are happening right now, I don't think he is ejected. I don't think that he is fired from the staff. I think he would basically stay on staff. They would strip him of his duties, and Marcus Freeman and or Mickens, whoever would take over at that point. But I don't think they're just going to boot him from the staff. I remember that happened a few years back. Notre Dame baseball, there was a pitching coach that was stripped of his duties, and one of the other assistants took it over in the middle of the season, and he was never fired for that matter. I think that might have been Dave Schrag's last year, so I'm giving it away when it happened. It's not a shock that it happened during the Dave Schrag era, but those kind of things do happen from time to time. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame women's basketball will play the Michigan Wolverines November 15th in Detroit in the 4th annual Shamrock Classic.
I think it's great. And the reason why I think it's great is you have 2 teams so close in proximity. 2 teams that just played each other, actually, if I'm not mistaken, right? They played each other in the last NCAA tournament.
They did, right here.
So yep. I just think, when you're trying to mobilize fans and get as many, fans as possible, and you're going to kind of like a neutral site like Detroit, a team like Michigan really makes sense. So, I'm not really so caught up on who the opponent is. I just think the Shamrock Classic is a really good idea. Then you start talking about locations, and then you start talking about what team makes sense to play in that location. So I think they've check, right? You've got the Shamrock Classic, check. You've picked a good site in Detroit, check, so your fans can get there. Yeah. But it's not obviously right in your backyard. And then the third check is you're playing a team that also is going to show up and bring a lot of numbers with them. And, I know they're not in the same conference, but Notre Dame and Michigan obviously have a lot of history with each other in terms of just schools and rivalries. And And what they might not be direct rivals, it's still kind of that territorial rivalry at the end of the day.
Little regional rivalry kind of thing. And this came up when Michigan was here for the NCAA tournament. Hey, you're going to play Notre Dame a little bit more. And they did play. Notre Dame and Michigan played at Purcell in Niele Ivy's first season. And last year in the NCAA tournament was the first time they had played since then. So I like this. This was something that was kind of, a few years back. They were working on this. Like, how could they do, this Shamrock Classic type thing? They played it in St. Louis, Niele Ivy's hometown, the first season. 2 years, the next year, they played against Illinois out in Washington, D.C., which was kind of a cool trip for a neutral site type game. Last year, they wanted to play USC in Brooklyn, and they were planning on playing that game the same day as the Notre Dame Army game at Yankee Stadium. But because of all of USC was already going to UConn that season, and because of their Big Ten travel and all that kind of stuff, they didn't want another big trip. So unfortunately, they weren't able to do that. They put together the home and home instead. And I think the Shamrock Classic last year ended up being the UConn game when it was at Notre Dame, so because they couldn't get like a neutral site figured out with somebody else, they just did it as a home game. So now they're going to go off to Detroit, and it'll be pretty cool because, like you said, you're going to have fans of both programs up there. You're going to play it in Detroit and kind of get out a little bit. So cool that they're keeping it going. So should be fun to be able to do that. And again, that'll be November 15th, Notre Dame and Michigan on the women's basketball hard court. So Joel Klatt said on his podcast recently, he thinks that the college football targeting penalty is terrible because it comes with the automatic ejection when a player is flagged, and also means that the player, as we see with Adon Shuler this week, is suspended for his next half of a game, which, like if you're ejected in the first half, you just get ejected for, you're suspended for the rest of the game. If you're ejected in the second half, it means you're ejected for the first half of the next game. So Klatt does not like this because of the suspension that comes with it. You buy or sell it?
I buy this actually. And I came up with, I buy the idea that the targeting is terrible. I buy that the automatic ejection is terrible. And I buy that it is a very subjective rule at this point, and we still can't get a clear, definitive, this is targeting versus not targeting. Here is the Jesse Steyer spin solution on targeting in college. I think how this should work is there should be like a warning system almost. I think that, and not even say, here's how I think about this. You get one warning in game. If you get another targeting, it's an ejection, and I don't mind the suspension the next game. However, I think if you get a warning in a game, you should get like another, and that's your only one. You should get another warning in the next game. And then as they compile up through the season, like your fifth one becomes an ejection, basically. Like, so if you're not
like a flagrant foul system like they have in the NBA is what you're saying.
Exactly. You get suspended after so many flagrant fouls. You get a suspension or an ejection after so many targeting penalties throughout the accumulation of the season, right? Because you can't just let guys off the hook and let them be headhunters every game. But if you get two same game, then yeah, I think you should get an ejection. But let's say Adon Shuler got one against Texas A&M, then he gets one against Purdue, and then maybe he gets one against USC. Then I think you could start talking about ejection at that point. I think you should basically get like a couple mulligans or yellow cards before you get your final red card at the end of the day.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way of doing it. So basically what you're saying, you build them up and then you have to sit for an entire game rather than, like wherever you're at in one half and then the next half.
Yeah. And then once you reach, let's say like 5 targetings on the season, then everyone after that is ejection. Like you don't get any more warnings after that. You know what I mean? Like you should get a bank of warnings before you just get the ejection boot.
I think my thing has always been just, if you do it one time in a game, it's just your common personal foul. It's a 15-yard penalty. Which really it should be anyway. They're not ejecting people in NFL games for, like, it's not even called targeting in an NFL game, but you can't hit up around the shoulders and helmet, like up above the shoulders and neck area. It's just a personal foul, which is what this should be. I think the ejection goes too far because there is subjectivity involved in it. There are plenty of people, there are plenty of people, obviously, just like who are talking in the YouTube chat right now, who don't think that Adon Shuler's hit should have been targeting. It was very close. He did tackle with his helmet up around the head and shoulders area, which is why he was ultimately ejected. I just think it should be a 15-yard penalty the first time you do it. If you do it a second time in the same game, then it's an ejection.
So we agree on that. 2-in-1 games should get you ejected, but not the first one.
Exactly. I just think it's too steep when there's just so much still gray area about what is.
Well, not only is it a gray area, but you have 2 top 10 teams and you're playing high speed, that's the hardest thing to take in consideration. Like, you're playing at such a high speed and so much stakes on the line, and you're trying to recover and, make up steps in the secondary or maybe force a turnover. It's just like, at the end of the day, no one is, and I will say this with a caveat, like 90% of guys aren't looking to target, I think it's obvious when there's clear intent when someone's trying to take a head off.
Right. All right. So we've got some differing opinions on this. I am Tenzin. I am the son of Ang. And the YouTube chat says Botello ejected for hitting someone's hip. Torrey Hunter Jr. got concussed and missed multiple.
That was against Texas, right?
Yep. They still don't know how to call it. The Botello thing, he tackled with the crown of his helmet. That's why he was ejected. It wasn't where he hit him. You can't tackle with the crown of your helmet no matter where. So to ace 454 ND's point, he says he doesn't agree you can seriously hurt someone with a bad hit. However, the rules for targeting need to be crystal clear. The refs need universal training, and it needs to be reviewed. It is reviewed, and that, whatever the call is on the field, or even if the call is not made on the field, they go to review. It has to be reviewed to determine if it is, but there's still the subjectivity of whoever the person is in the replay booth as to whether or not they think it is. Yeah, I do agree. You can seriously hurt someone with a bad hit, including yourself, which is why they don't want people tackling with the crown of their helmets. But that's why, as I am Tenzin is saying, they miss it all the time. Then yes, I agree. They miss it all the time. And he says, then where's the offensive targeting? Because there are plenty of guys on offense who have done the same kind of things, and it's not being called. And that's why I don't think there should be an ejection for it. It should just be a personal foul, at least, if you're going to keep the ejection, it should be just a personal foul for the first offense in a game, second offense, then your ejection. I don't completely disagree with Jesse's point system either. Like if it's because the whole
because you're then a notorious targeter at that point.
Right. The whole purpose.
It's not just a one-off situation.
Right. The whole purpose of this thing is to dissuade people from doing it again. So, yes. All right. Final timeout, and then we're back to wrap up rapid fire with a couple more topics right after this. Winding down Budweiser's weekday sports beats with irishbreakdown.com and rapid fire. Got about 4 minutes to go here. With
Dolphins?
Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse, is Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel done if Miami gets hammered by Buffalo tonight?
If they lose 40-7, he's not taking that flight back home.
That's it.
There's just you can't, like, they've looked horrible. And
I know.
I think the way that you should phrase this question, to be honest with you, is Mike McDaniel and Tua done, because Tua is a Mike McDaniel product. And this whole offense was built around him. I don't think anyone else is going to give Tua another shot like McDaniel has during his tenure with the Dolphins. So I think I think there's a lot on the line for both Tua and McDaniel. If Tua wants to be an NFL quarterback and continue to be a starting NFL quarterback, there's a lot of pressure on him tonight to at least play well. Because if they both get hammered, I think both of their time as being an NFL head coach and an NFL starting quarterback, that their time is up. And Bobby's going to hammer me in the chat. That is one of my favorite coaches. A lot is just falling apart around him. I think he's great, great motivator, a great, schematic guy, but there's just a lot of injuries and bad defense and a lot going wrong.
The defense has gotten worse with each year. A couple of years ago, they were a pretty good defense, but they've lost some guys from the defensive line, some injuries from the defensive line from when they were a playoff team a couple of years ago. But the biggest indictment, kind of like you said, they're tied together. And it used to be, like Tua's had the injuries, and they were at least a serviceable team as long as Tua was healthy. But like last year, the year before, when Tua was out, everything would just fall apart. Like the offense could not function without him. Like Devon Achane was one of the best running backs in the NFL as long as Tua was there. As soon as Tua was out, Achane was useless. But now the problem is you've got both of those guys and you just look bad. It is just not a good offense. They scored a little bit more against the Patriots last week. I don't know what that means, but I feel like you've at least got to be very competitive with Buffalo tonight, or the end is coming pretty quickly, I think, for Mike McDaniel.
That's why I'm so tempted to bet on Miami to cover the spread tonight. A lot rides on this game.
When the chips are down and the odds
divisional,
are up.
It's a Thursday night, short week. You got, your head coach and quarterback or jobs are on the line. I don't know.
Bobby O'Shea in the YouTube chat, he says, "Oh, I know. I write everything down in my IB journal." He is keeping tabs on everything, everywhere. All right. Jesse will be back for rapid fire tomorrow. There will be no whiteboard. Oh, that's right. You won't be here tomorrow. Bobby's going to be in tomorrow. What are you doing tomorrow, real quickly?
I'm going to get my marriage license.
Oh, well, congratulations. Rumor has it he's getting married very soon. All right. Good stuff. Thanks, Jesse. I will talk to you later, and we will be back, of course, tomorrow. We do have that Thursday night game coming up here in just a little bit. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com.